Everyone loves to call the late Ottoman Empire the sick man of Europe. It's a great little soundbite. It implies a slow, dignified decline, like a grandparent fading away. The reality was less poetic and more frantic. For decades, Sultan Abdulhamid II had kept things together with a paranoid secret police force and a policy of playing European powers against each other. It was stable, in the way a house of cards is stable right before someone sneezes. And a group calling themselves the Young Turks were about to sneeze violently. So, in 1908, the Committee of Union and Progress, or CUP, forced the Sultan to restore the constitution. Suddenly, it was party time in Constantinople. For one brief, shining moment, everyone thought things were fixed. Turks, Armenians, Greeks, Jews, Arabs, all hugging in the streets. The revolution slogan was liberty, equality, fraternity. A classic, borrowed straight from the French, which is always a sign of a well-thought-out, original plan. They were going to build a modern, pluralistic Ottoman paradise. This level of optimism is usually only seen right before a cartoon character runs off a cliff. This happy little experiment in multicultural harmony lasted about 5 minutes. A conservative counter-coup popped up in 1909 to restore the Sultan's absolute power. The CUP crushed it, deposed Abdulhamid II for good, and installed his brother Mehmed V. Mehmed V's main job was to look distinguished and not have any opinions. The real power fell to a triumvirate, a fancy word for 3 guys running the show. Talat Pasha, the bureaucrat, Enver Pasha, the ambitious soldier, and Jemal Pasha, the guy who got sent to deal with the navy. They weren't restoring a constitution, they were staging a corporate takeover. Enver Pasha had a massive crush on the German military. He saw their discipline, their pointy helmets, their impeccable parades, and thought, I want that. So he brought in a German military mission led by General Lehman von Sanders to whip the Ottoman army into shape. They got new Mauser rifles, new field gray uniforms, and a whole lot of German officers yelling at them. This was great for looking impressive. It was less effective at solving fundamental issues like, feeding the troops or having roads to move them on. But they looked fantastic while they were starving. For centuries, the Ottomans had been stuck with the capitulations. These were treaties that gave Europeans massive tax breaks and legal immunity inside the empire. It was like the entire country was a duty-free shop for France and Britain. The Young Turks, quite reasonably, wanted this to stop, so they tried to abolish them. The European powers responded with the diplomatic equivalent of "lol no." It turns out that nations benefiting from your economic weakness aren't super keen on helping you get stronger. A truly shocking discovery. The Young Turks were obsessed with centralization. They saw a messy, decentralized empire and decided the solution was a tidal wave of paperwork from the capital. A key part of this was secularizing law and education, wresting control away from the religious establishment. They created new state-run schools designed to produce loyal, modern Ottoman citizens. This was a direct challenge to the ulema, the clerical class, who had run education for centuries. Announcing to a deeply traditional society that Istanbul bureaucrats now know best is a bold move. A really bold move. To their credit, the CUP era saw new opportunities for women. They were encouraged to get educated, enter some professions, and participate more in public life. Women's magazines were founded, and women were admitted to lectures at Istanbul University for the first time in 1914. But this wasn't really about equality. The rhetoric was all about creating enlightened mothers who could raise a new generation of patriotic, Turkish-speaking sons. It was feminism as a tool for state building. Progress, sure, but with a very clear government-approved agenda attached. The initial promise of Ottomanism, this lovely idea of a shared identity for all citizens, quickly soured. The CUP leadership increasingly believed that the only way to save the empire was to make it more Turkish. This policy, known as Turkification, involved promoting the Turkish language and culture above all others. For the millions of Arabs, Armenians, Greeks, and Albanians who thought they were part of a grand revival, this felt like a bait and switch. The Young Turks' brilliant plan for unity was to tell 40% of their population that their identity was now secondary. All this modernization theory met a very harsh reality in 1912, the First Balkan War. A coalition of Bulgaria, Serbia, Greece, and Montenegro decided to carve up the remaining Ottoman territory in Europe. The newly reformed, German-trained Ottoman army was expected to perform well. It did not. It was a catastrophic failure. They lost nearly all of their European lands in a matter of weeks. This humiliation shattered the CUP's prestige and pushed them toward an even more extreme, desperate nationalism. Nothing breeds fanaticism like a spectacular public failure. After the Balkan disaster, the Young Turks were diplomatically isolated. The British and French, who had financial interests in the empire, still saw them as a lost cause. They needed a powerful friend. And there was one major European power that was also feeling a bit left out of the cool kids club: Germany. Berlin saw a chance to gain influence in the Middle East. They sold the Ottomans modern warships, like the SMS Goeben, and doubled down on military and economic aid. It was a match made in geopolitical heaven. If heaven is a place where two insecure empires make a series of increasingly poor decisions together. So, what did all this modernization actually achieve? The Young Turks tried to drag a medieval empire into the 20th century by sheer force of will. They built railways, centralized the state, and created a more professional army and bureaucracy. But they did it through an authoritarian, hyper-nationalist lens. The state they built was more efficient, yes, but it was efficient at everything, including suppression and violence. The new telegraph lines could send orders for reform, or they could send orders for deportations. This modernized state machinery, combined with a radical ideology forged in defeat, would soon be turned to truly horrific purposes during World War I. In the end, the Young Turk Revolution is the perfect historical tragedy, a movement born from ideals of liberty and unity that ended up paving the way for dictatorship and genocide. They wanted to save the Ottoman Empire, but ended up destroying it, creating the conditions for the birth of the modern Republic of Turkey from its ashes. They tore down the old house because it was rotting, but the new one they built had poison in the foundations. It's a classic story of good intentions meeting the brutal sledgehammer of reality, nationalism, and bad timing. A reminder that the road to hell isn't just paved with good intentions, it's often meticulously planned by a committee. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!